Once the Alpha series and EX series began, few of the original Street Fighter II team remained at Capcom. Some had left to work with SNK while others had joined Akira Nishitani to form Arika. Longtime producers Noritaka Funamizu and Yoshiki Okamoto had little to do with the franchise as they had both moved on to other projects. When Capcom decided to move forward with the true sequel to Street Fighter II, neither were deeply involved. So Capcom found another producer for the project with Tomoshi Sadamoto, who previously worked on a beat-em-up named Battle Circuit. The first decision made on Street Fighter III was to drop the entire cast of characters previously introduced and start fresh with a completely new roster. When news of this decision was leaked to the public, fans were outraged, which forced Capcom to rethink their strategy. Because of this, Ryu and Ken made a return to the series. The music for the game was composed by Hideki Okugawa along with Yuki Iwai. Back in 1988, Capcom manufactured the Capcom Play System, or CPS, an arcade board used to run games like Street Fighter II. Due to its vulnerability to bootleg versions in the arcades, it was upgraded to the CPS-2 in 1993, which prevented software piracy and ran games like Super Street Fighter II. By 1997, Capcom introduced a second successor with the CPS-3. The CPS-3 supplied arcade games on CD and allowed Capcom to develop highly animated 2D fighting games with more elaborate sprites and new enhancements such as stun sprites and turnaround states. This same engine was used for the next chapter of Street Fighter when Capcom released Street Fighter III: The New Generation on February 4th, 1997. The game featured a fighting system based on Super Turbo, with additions featured in Capcom's other fighting games. There was a stun gauge that would increase as the character would take damage until it completely filled, which made the character stunned. Dash moves and high jumps were able to be performed, a feature originally found in Darkstalkers. Leap attacks allowed for a counter move against crouching enemies. The newest and most notable feature was the parry move. When parrying, the player could evade an opponent's incoming attack without taking damage. At the same time, the opponent would become vulnerable to a counterattack. This move required precise timing on the player's part to input the command at the same time as when the attack made contact. Super combo moves returned but were now called Super Arts. After selecting a character, the player must choose one of 3 Super Arts to use in battle. Depending on which Super Art was chosen, the length of the Super Art gauge would vary as well as the number of stocks available. While Ken and Ryu returned in Street Fighter III, there was a shift in focus. The new main character was Alex, a large fighter who specialized in wrestling moves. Along with Alex, a new cast of characters were introduced in Street Fighter III. Elena is a friendly African princess from Nairobi who travels to Japan as an exchange student. Oro is a 140-year-old hermit in search of a fighter worthy of learning his fighting style. He fights while binding one of his arms to avoid accidentally killing his opponent. Sean is a young Brazilian fighter who's being trained by Ken. Yoon is a cocky young kung fu expert who's protecting his hometown in Hong Kong. His twin brother Yang is selectable in the game as a palette swap. Replacing M. Bison as the final boss was Gil, the leader of a secret organization named the Illuminati. Gil has the power to manipulate fire and ice, and through his organization, desires to restore balance to the world by recreating it. His intentions lead to the tournament and many of the game's characters. Alex seeks revenge against Gil for injuring his mentor. Dudley is one of England's top boxers and seeks his father's antique car, which was stolen by Gil. Ibuki is an aspiring ninja who fights in the tournament as part of her final exam. Necro is a Russian man who was kidnapped and experimented on by the Illuminati's G Project. With the new hand-drawn animated sprites, Sadamoto kept the game moving at a smooth 64 frames per second, a move that some players felt made the game slower compared to prior Street Fighter games. When the game was released in arcades, fans became hesitant to the changes introduced in Street Fighter III. Most of the new characters in Street Fighter III came off as a bit strange or even off-putting for many fans, even by the series standards. Some didn't care for the parrying system or the relatively small cast of characters. Still, many fans continued to play Street Fighter III, adapting to the changes made before playing competitively against others again. According to an interview with Noritaka Funamizu, Capcom knew that as the sequel to the legendary Street Fighter II, Street Fighter III had a lot to live up to. Because the fighting system was still so new, they felt that there was a lot that still could be done better, so they continued to rebalance the game and had high hopes for the series' potential. By October 30th of that same year, Capcom rushed out the series' second installment with Street Fighter III Second Impact Giant Attack. A new feature added to Street Fighter III was the EX specials. Players could perform a more powerful version of a special by pressing 2 attack buttons instead of 1. This came at the expense of a certain portion of the Super Art gauge. Other new abilities included grapple defenses, which allowed players to escape a throw attack. Personal actions, which were character-specific taunts, were beneficial to players if pulled off successfully. There was also a new bonus round that tested players' skills at parrying. Along with these new features, Second Impact added new and familiar faces to the game's roster. Yang returned as a selectable character but was now separate from his brother Yoon and had his own set of moves. Akuma made a return as a secret opponent and unlockable character along with his counterpart Shin Akuma. Urien is Gil's younger, bitter brother who seeks to take control of the Illuminati organization. While Gil could manipulate fire and ice, Urien could manipulate electricity and metal. Hugo is a German wrestler who is based on Ondor, an enemy character from the Street Fighter spin-off Final Fight. Both characters were a direct nod to the legendary wrestler Andre the Giant. His connection to Final Fight is made even more apparent as he is accompanied by his manager Poison, another enemy character from Final Fight. Many aspects of the fighting system, such as the parrying system, were refined and felt better overall. Despite the attempt at injecting more familiarity into Street Fighter III, it still didn't come off as what fans wanted at the time. So Capcom took a break from Street Fighter III and focused on releasing new entries in the Street Fighter Alpha series and Street Fighter EX series. On May 12, 1999, Capcom released Street Fighter III Third Strike Fight for the Future, the third and final installment of the Street Fighter III series. Hideki Okugawa returned to compose the game's music and partnered with Lockdown Entertainment, the Canadian hip-hop artist Infinite, to compose part of the soundtrack. Along with the new design, there were new stages, new endings, and even new voice actors for the characters. The storyline for Third Strike continued where the prior two games left off. With Capcom having learned a lot over the years, Third Strike felt a bit like a resolution. The game took all the new and best elements of Street Fighter III and significantly polished them into a well-balanced fighting system. Along with an updated version of the previous bonus round, another one was included that paid homage to the classic bonus round in Street Fighter II. 4 more characters were added to Street Fighter III, which increased the game's roster to 20. Chun-Li makes a return to the series while searching for a young orphan under her care that was kidnapped. Originally planned to be Ryu's sister, Makoto is a young Japanese girl specialized in karate who seeks to restore her family's dojo. Q is a mysterious figure who wears a mask and overcoat. He appears in the game as a selectable character as well as a secret opponent. Q is also modeled after the character Robot Detective K from a popular Japanese show in the 70s. Remy is a long-haired fighter from France who bears a grudge against all fighters following the disappearance of his father and death of his sister. 12 is one of the successful soldiers created from the Illuminati's G Project who can shape his body into weapons. His first orders are to hunt down and kill his prototype Necro. Despite Capcom's efforts to make the series complete by the third installment, Street Fighter III failed to make an impact with fans and in the arcades. The industry had moved on with the rise of polygonal fighters and Street Fighter III was left behind. By the end of 1999 in Japan, Capcom released Street Fighter III Double Impact on the Dreamcast, which was a compilation of New Generation and Second Impact. Third Strike was released as a standalone game on the Dreamcast the following year. Street Fighter III has long been cherished by fans. It remains one of the best looking and most balanced fighting game of all time. Thanks to Hideki Okugawa, it has also become known for having one of the best video game soundtracks. However, it also remains very controversial and continues to be debated between longtime fans as well. On one side of the argument, fans believe that Street Fighter III was a proper evolution of Street Fighter II. It introduced a fighting system that remained superior to Super Turbo with its complexities and innovations such as the parrying system. On the other side of the argument, longtime fans felt that the new parrying system was too difficult for newcomers to easily comprehend and only intended for hardcore players. This made Street Fighter III lack the casual appeal found in Street Fighter II. They also felt that the new characters lacked the universal appeal found in other Street Fighter games. To them, these characters came off as mere imitations of the ones found in Street Fighter II. Those who hated Street Fighter III considered the Alpha series a more worthy follow-up to Street Fighter II, despite it being a prequel. Whatever the case, Street Fighter III was ultimately seen as a failure to Capcom, never being able to live up to its predecessor. This failure could be pointed back to many things occurring at the time for fighting games in general. It could have been due to the previously mentioned conflict between longtime fans. It could have been due to the lack of input from the original Street Fighter II team who made the series such a success. Or it could have been due to the dying arcade industry in the US by the late 90s. For a while, Street Fighter III began to become forgotten among fans. Despite other entries in the franchise that received numerous ports to other consoles, Street Fighter III only had 2 console ports on the Dreamcast during its initial release. It wouldn't be until 2004 when Capcom marked the 15th anniversary of Street Fighter that the series would become re-released. It was first released on the PlayStation 2 in Japan as a standalone game with all the updates from the Dreamcast version along with a limited edition package. When it was released outside of Japan, it was part of the Street Fighter Anniversary Collection along with Hyper Street Fighter 2. This compilation also came to the Xbox and featured an online versus mode. In that same year, at the Evolution Fighting Tournament in Las Vegas, there was a famous match between Daigo Umehara and Justin Wong that became a famous internet video.
Overcome Rao, now on the verge of putting Daigo down, 1-0.
After Street Fighter II arrived in arcades, fans saw numerous updates to the game and numerous spin-offs spawning their own series. So when it came to an actual sequel with Street Fighter III, it's likely that many fans expected a whole new experience from the fighting series. However, with so many expectations following Street Fighter II's incredible success, it's possible that no other game could have surpassed it. After numerous attempts at revitalizing Street Fighter, the entire franchise was put on an indefinite hiatus while Capcom invested its focus elsewhere. Despite its lack of success in its early years, Street Fighter III has since developed a large fan base and has now reached that level of popularity Capcom once sought for the series. And today, it continues to stand with the best in the genre. Next time, in Part 6 of the Street Fighter Retrospective, Capcom takes the Street Fighter series in another new direction with a battle against the legendary superheroes. This would lead to the birth of a new fighting game franchise where Capcom's best would take on a legendary comic book company, a Japanese animation company, and a long-time rivalry that's been years in the making.